Welcome to the FuturePrint webinar, or today's webinar. The theme of this session is Industrial Inkjet, what next? And our last session back in July, we looked at the development of Inkjet. We're going to kind of revisit that a little, but we got a different group of panelists today, which is fantastic. We have our first transatlantic guest, actually, Ken Stack, and you're in the US, in the Michigan area. Thanks for joining us, Ken. Ken's
Great to be here.
Ken's with EPS, and he'll talk a bit about that and give us a bit of insight in terms of market trends and developments. He's got a huge amount of expertise and wisdom. One of the benefits of age, isn't it, Ken? And
There you go. Very subtle way to say I'm old, Marcus. Thank you very much, man.
yeah, I'll take that. Thank you very much. Also joining us today, Mikael Boedler from INKATRONIC. Welcome, Mikael. And Mikael's located in Austria.
Yes, correct. Thank you very much, Marcus, for inviting me here to talk a bit about what INKATRONIC is doing in industrial applications with inkjet
Yeah, you do
technology.
some amazing work, as is Ken, and also joining us, Royce Dodds. And somewhere in Germany, I know you sound English, Royce, but you have probably lived in Germany as long as you've lived in England. Is that right?
It's exactly 50-50 at the moment. Yeah.
Is it?
Yeah.
You feel a bit of both, or are you?
But I would feel a bit more German, stranger than English now. I struggled to drive when I was back in England recently. So,
I mean, okay, so that's
yeah.
native, so to speak. So, and Royce is joining us from Wilsonart. And so, what I've assembled today and what we have on the panel really covers a lot of the spectrum of industrial inkjet. Ken will give us the big picture and also talk a bit about EPS and direct to shape, which obviously links in with the packaging industry. Mikhail's and Inkatronic do a huge amount of work within the functional area, which is really exciting and different. And it also plays to the strength, I think, of inkjet and the diversity of it. And then Royce, I know, has a huge amount of experience and interesting insights around decor, but also with AI. So I think in the space of an hour, we're going to get a really cool, rounded pictures. So we're going to kick off now, really, with Ken, because he had to get up super early to get on this call. So we'll have to let him go first. So Ken, if you could give us a little bit of the insight of who you are and some of the trends
Sure.
and developments in your opinion of the future, really, before we then talk about EPS.
Sure. Well, again, Marcus, thanks for having me. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Ken Stack. I've been in the digital printing business for close to 30 years. Started a few companies. The last one was a company called Jetreon that was focused on the digital label and packaging space. Sold that to EFI in '07. Was on the EFI management team for a number of years. After a very feeble attempt at retirement, I started a company called Proximus that is probably the largest M&A advisory within the industrial print world. I've done over 1 billion, 2 billion, three of deals within industrial inkjet. So I've been lucky because I've gotten to see both sort of the history and across a lot of different vertical markets. So it's been a fun ride. And as Marcus alluded to, I've actually taken on a new challenge this year to become the executive chairman of EPS, which I'll talk about as we go forward. So Marcus had asked me to talk a little bit about sort of the history of industrial inkjet and then sort of what's coming. First, let's sort of define at least how I view industrial inkjet. Industrial inkjet is a series of markets that are tied together by a common technology. So there are a lot of different applications, a lot of different markets. We go back to really the originals, things like super wide and wide format, outdoor. It was 100% screen back in the 80s and 90s. Obviously, nowadays, that market is almost 100% digital. So the analog to digital transition there has completely taken over. Markets like ceramics, okay, markets like textiles, markets like labels, okay, markets like corrugated, markets like laminates. These are all the world today that we live in that we call at least today's sort of industrial inkjet. And all of these markets, to me, where the really interesting points is they've all gone through periods of what I call hypergrowth. And okay, we're not open AI in our world, but if I define hypergrowth at 15 to 25% a year market growth, all of these things have gone through some sort of exponential growth period. And it's always with two common themes. First one is obviously market forces. Market forces in any of those markets are driving down run lengths, which obviously hurts setup costs, forces that analog is now becoming too expensive, pushing up the need for digital. But the question for me, and the really interesting thing about all of those markets is when do they go exponential? Those market forces usually are there. Yeah, they get worse over time, but they're usually already there. It's really when does the technology rise up to meet the market need in that specific market. Okay, so if we go back to wide format today, probably 80–90% of the wide format world is already digital. It's undergone a complete transformation from analog to digital. Same thing with ceramic tiles, right? Ceramic tiles, if you think about market growth, was probably the fastest growing digital print market in history. I don't know if it's ever going to be eclipsed. It went from sort of 0 to 100 in almost a period of 5 or 10 years. Kind of crashed a bit after the Asian real estate issues, but still to this day, still a large market. Textile was incredible. Textile pre-COVID was growing 15 to 25% a year, 3 to 5 years in a row, exploding. COVID hit. We all stopped buying Hermès ties. We stopped getting dressed up. The market changed quite a lot. A lot of Asian competitors came in, changed the market dynamics on price. And we can talk more about that later, Marcus, if you want. But the interesting thing with textile is it's still, even though from a market perspective, particularly for Western suppliers, kind of a difficult market, it's still absolutely gigantic, perhaps though at a lower profit point. Labels, I would say, is somewhere in the middle of that transition. Okay, it's had some really good years over the last 3 to 5 years of growth. It's becoming digital is now a mainstay within that market. And it's still sort of somewhere in the middle of that transition. I would say for laminate and corrugated, those are pretty interesting markets. They're absolutely gigantic markets. They're certainly moving towards digital. I think people have been, I would say, a little disappointed in the level of growth of those markets, at least from a supplier perspective, right? A lot of people have spent millions and millions developing products. They've certainly grown, but they haven't grown to the level of, say, a wide format or a ceramics, mostly because I think the market need didn't quite have the same pull maybe as some of those other markets. For me, though, in terms of the future, the two markets that I see as the future are direct to object, direct to shape, as we call it. They both sound to me the same thing, and functional printing. And I'm going to let Mikael kind of jump into the details of functional print, but I'll spend a few minutes on direct to shape. I actually have jumped back into the industry to take over as executive chairman of EPS because I think direct to shape is exactly at that moment of exponential growth. The market need has been there forever. Pad print, offset, screen have dominated direct object printing for 50, 100 years. Okay. And it's a massive market, as big as any of the markets that we just talked about. The hard part, though, is it's a question of geometry. Unlike all of those other markets, they print on things that are flat. Okay, we have to print on things that are round, that have funny contours, that are shaped. We have to pick those objects up. We have to deal with thousands and thousands of different surfaces. So technologically, it's been a really difficult market to crack. And what's happened over the last sort of 3 to 5 years, and the reason that I'm so interested in the market, is the technology has now risen up. Right. One of the main technological improvements that have happened is the ability to jet over longer distances. Because we're printing on non-flat objects, I can't be necessarily within a millimeter of the distance, right? When we all started in this business, we used to try to set up printers to less than a millimeter. Then we were like, oh my gosh, we got a little bit over a millimeter. This is great. Well, now we're jetting at 3 to 5, 7 millimeters. This opens the door now for direct to shape. Secondly, print head improvements in terms of reliability, in terms of high viscosity inks, the ability to print on a lot of surfaces. Automation has improved drastically. Okay. And so for me, what's really interesting about those markets is they really start to go exponential when the technology rises up and we get to what we call production capacity. Okay. What do I mean by that? So today, you can take a look at, for example, direct to shape, and direct to shape print has been around forever. Think of, the little multi-pass printers that go, back and forth like your home printer. They're printing cell phone cases, promotional goods. That's been around forever. Great little market, but that's never going to go impact Procter and Gamble, right? Where you're talking about having to produce billions and billions of plastic bottles or something like that. Well, today the technology has actually gotten there where we can actually do production volumes. And Marcus, would you mind flipping up a couple of those overheads? So I'm just going to show you a few examples. These are actual systems that are in the field today. The one on the top is printing caps and closures. Okay, so today in the field, we're printing 2,000 fully digital caps in a minute. Think about that, in a minute, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Okay, this is a true production application today. Not a lot of people realize how much of those markets are starting to shift to digital. And that's why I'm so excited about direct to shape. Same thing with promotional goods. The system on the bottom there is printing, depending on the shape and the size, 400 to 2,000 parts a minute. That's the kind of volume I'm talking about in production. If you flip to the next slide, Marcus, we can see some really interesting shapes. Golf balls, massive market. So today, EPS is the undisputed leader in golf ball printing. We print millions and millions of golf balls a year, fully digital. When you see those really cool colors or really cool shapes, I can assure you that's not pad printing, which is today the dominant sort of printing technology in that market. So these systems print thousands of golf balls an hour. Saw blades. If you walk into a Home Depot today, a huge chunk of the saw blades that you see on the shelf today are already digital. Okay. And these are the kind of things. But if you look at those shapes, very, very different than trying to print on a web or something flat, right? You've got to be able to move the part underneath the print head with micron accuracy, be able to deliver the drop on time to a surface that was never meant to be digitally printed. Okay. Finally, the last overhead. This is actually where, to me, the evolution is going. This is a real product. In fact, we're showing it next week, I think, for the first time at the Printing United show down in Orlando. This is actually an inkjet head on the end of a robot for printing large contours. Think about the screen markets, right? Where you're screen printing very, very large contoured objects. We can now do that with digital. The thing that's so interesting to me about the direct to shape markets, and you know, as Marcus pointed out very nicely for me, I'm old and have been around for a long time. If you think about these other markets, it's all about cost savings, right? It's all about saving on setup as run lengths shorten. And there's two areas there. There's materials and there's labor. Okay. We have never in our history been so sensitive right now to cost, right? Inflation is crazy, right? If you think about your consumables cost over the last 3 to 5 years, they're up 10, 20, 30%. But most important is the labor side. If you think about the setup on a typical pad print job, let's say I'm printing a construction helmet, you know, logo on the front, someone's name on the side, happy face on the third side. The setup for that job is over an hour to print 20 or 30 helmets. It's crazy. Those printers charge a $400 setup fee. With digital, that now becomes your profit, right? Because there is no setup time. This is the value proposition that I find so interesting for direct to shape. It is the best analog to digital value proposition in terms of cost savings that I've ever seen. I think, you know, so for me, direct to shape is just entering that sort of exponential growth because we now can hit production volumes, right? And meet the market needs of being able to print on extremely complex, difficult objects. So that's why I'm so excited about it. I think print for manufacture, I certainly won't steal Mikael's thunder, but that's another area where there's literally 50, 75, 100 different end use applications, really hard fluid problems. But again, for some of the same reasons I just talked about, ability to jet different fluids, ability to jet over a larger distance, he's going to, I think, talk about some of those same upsides for print for manufacture. So hopefully that gives you sort of a little bit of history of the market, kind of where we're going. I think direct to shape and print for manufacture or functional print are certainly the future of industrial inkjet.
Brilliant, Ken. Thanks so much for that. A couple of thoughts sprang into my mind I wanted to ask. So
Sure.
the compelling thing here in terms of adoption seems to be economics. Is that was true of ceramics as well, right?
That's true of every one of those markets. That's a great point, Marcus. So, you know, it's interesting. If I look at our EPS customers, 80% buy because of their current jobs. Think about it. If you're a producer, whether you're a manufacturer of golf balls or saw blades or a decorator, if you're going to make a large system purchase, you want to know you have the business today. You don't want to say, "Oh, I'm going to go buy this for some new capability, and then I'm going to go try to sell that volume." That's a pretty hard sales pitch. Okay, so the number one reason people and the number one reason those markets hit that exponential growth curve because enough people can say, "Hey, I'm going to take the business I have today, put in this machine, and then pay it off over the next 6, 8, 12 months." That's it. Selling new technology and new ability, things like 2D barcodes, right? We get a lot of calls about 2D barcodes, and that's great. Okay. But if you're going to want those markets to go exponential, you've got to hit the meat of the market, right? And the meat of the market is their current business. If you think about any manufacturer or decorator today, ask them the average age of their decorating staff. It's, as you already called me, old, right? We're 50 plus years old. Okay. Find a 25-year-old that wants to be elbow high in solvent pad ink or burning screens. Okay. But I can find a 25-year-old that wants to run a digital printer, right? And quite honestly, they're usually pretty good at it, very adept at it. It's very natural. So the labor issue right now is also driving a lot of this adoption, right? Because people just can't find operators that are willing to go in and set up an offset press or, like I said, burn screen plates. So for me, that's when I look as an analyst at a market, I'm looking for, okay, how many forces are adding up to drive that transition? And that's why I'm so excited about, direct to shape. And that's why I got back in.
Brilliant. And one other question. So presumably the people adopting the technology are pad printers, or are you finding
Pad printer, pad offset and screen.
and are they viewing this tech as a replacement, or are they seeing it as an addition? Or
Great question. I think from a value perspective, it's got to be essentially a replacement, right? Again, if less you're willing to change that labor force within your plant, that's where the savings come from, right? And what's going to drive them, though, is when their neighbor does it. In fact, I was just giving a talk to a group that does in mold labels, right? So lots of plastic manufacturers. And my comment was this: look, it goes really slowly, and then all of a sudden. Right. And that's sort of the moment I think that we're in a digital. Like when your competitor adopts digital and drops the decorating cost by 25% and still can do short run, that's when then you're too late, right? You've lost the business already. And so for me, certainly do I think analog's going away? Absolutely not. We're never going to move 100% of analog volume to digital in any market, right? There's always going to be run lengths that make sense for analog. There's always going to be applications that we can't quite do. But this is my point again about production. Ultra short run's been around for a long time with the little multi-pass stuff. And we sell that too. We sell that to our smaller customers that don't have the volume for a large production machine. But when you want to see a market truly transition, make that come up across the S curve, right? That's when people move digital into true production. It's happened in wide format, it happened in ceramics, it happened in textile, it's happening right now in labels. Right. To me, as an analyst, when I look at those markets, that was the tipping point, right? Is when it went into true production, when you could replace your analog gear. And again, you're never going to replace it all. I would never say that, right? But when you can start taking 20, 30, 40% of your volume, which by the way, is really 80% of the value, right? Because you're selling those digitally printed products for more money than you were your analog. That's when a market to me gets really interesting.
yeah, and it's exciting that, like you said, some of the sort of forces that we may seen as threatening and negative and so on are actually the ones that are playing into the positive.
That's our drivers. That if you think back in our history of industrial digital, that's what drove us here, right? In every single one of those markets, it's really the same playbook over and over and over again.
Yeah,
different application.
Thanks, Ken. Brilliant. And moving on from Ken's brilliant picture of development and trends and so on and change. From packaging and direct to shape, we're now going to focus a little on functional. And it's been an area, I think, of the printing or industrial printing world that's always posed perhaps some of the bigger challenges for inkjet. So Mikael at INKATRONIC now, Mikael is going to give us a little bit of insight really around some of the work that INKATRONIC are doing, because they're really succeeding. I'm interested to hear if some of those economic forces are helping and actually how you're solving those complex issues and problems that going forward that I know you're having huge success. So Mikael, if you'd like to share some slides, it'd be great to find out more.
Yes, definitely. I mean, here at INKATRONIC, we are liking challenges. So this is what really is exciting us in functional fluid applications. But yeah, to present myself, and good afternoon, everyone. And thank you for joining the discussion. My name is Mikael Boedler, and I lead new business development at INKATRONIC. And I've been involved with inkjet for more than 7 years. And at INKATRONIC, we focus on enabling advanced inkjet solutions for industrial and functional applications. So usually, when I talk to companies who are not familiar with inkjet, maybe it's the first time that they heard the term and are not familiar about the capabilities of inkjet, I usually start saying that inkjet is not just a printing technology. It is a highly precise, digitally controlled material deposition process. That simple perspective shift often changes the way people think about what inkjet can do. I'm going to share here a few slides. So let me have a look. Correct. Here we go. Are you able to see my screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, so discussing where inkjet is used today, right? So over the last decade, inkjet has evolved far beyond graphics, textiles, and labels. Today, it's firmly established as a tool for advanced manufacturing. I mean, it's used in electronics, it's used in biomedical devices, photovoltaics, and coatings. And we already see inkjet being used to jet materials across the full viscosity spectrum. I mean, just two examples, right? When you're looking at biomedical fluids, right, that are being jetted or deposited contactless, right? We're talking maybe in the 2 centipoise range, which is as well becoming extremely challenging as far as the selection of printers that are capable of handling such low viscosity fluids. But then on the other spectrum, we are also looking at functional and insulative coatings, and they can go well above 80 centipoise. So finding the solutions for the challenges on both edges of the spectrum, this is really where we try to bring components, solutions, and modules to facilitate integration of inkjet in these industrial processes. And the range of function applications is expanding rapidly. Coating glass to add surface conductivity, applying perovskite layers for solar cells there. Epson, you really see them bringing printers that are able to handle stronger solvents, or building multi-material components layer by layer. These are all examples of inkjet being used not to decorate, but to manufacture. And yeah, at INKATRONIC, we've been focusing on functional coating applications. I think that this is really where the past 2.5 years we have been intensively investing our resources and collaborating with many companies from the industry, and particularly insulative coatings for industrial and automotive components, as well in the aerospace industry. There's a lot of demand for applying insulative coatings differently to the processes used nowadays in the industry. And it's well known that Zara has taken a leading position in battery coating applications for the EV, for the electrical vehicle industry, and using inkjet to apply thin uniform layers, which are critical for battery safety and durability. These are applications that are already running in mass production in China, where really inkjet has shown it can be as well used in mass production as a technology. But in our view, what is happening in China represents only a fraction of what inkjet is capable of, right? And we're talking about flat surfaces, but we can do so much more with inkjet. And we decided to push those boundaries. So yeah, towards the digital application of coatings on complex 3D parts. So not only flat surfaces, but really surfaces that are nowadays difficult to apply films over it, or these parts are typically insulated with powder coating or spray systems, and which come with several drawbacks. We're talking about high material waste. We're talking about limited control over coating and thickness, and of course, no ability to apply coatings selectively. Now, in my opinion, and as well from what we have seen, inkjet provides an elegant solutions to all these challenges. And this is what we are trying to really explore and see what is possible. So with our systems and with here in our application center in Austria, we are able to apply coatings precisely with 40, 80, up to 180 micrometers thick, with a tolerance of ±4 microns, and to do so selectively on 3D surfaces. So, and some surfaces we can jet from distances over 50 millimeters and still have the tolerance, the thickness tolerances that are demanded. And yeah, applying material only where it's needed. So with no waste. The result is not just a more sustainable process, but it also reduces the total part weight. It improves thermal performance, and it gives manufacturers new design flexibility that traditional coating methods simply can't achieve. So the question then is, what comes next for industrial inkjet? The next wave of innovation will come from chemistry. So as printer technology continues to evolve, supporting higher viscosities, higher temperatures, and broader material compatibility, this is really what is opening the door for chemistry companies to develop more functional and more complex formulations. This means we'll see inks that conduct, we'll see inks that insulate chemistries that insulate, react, or even cure into structural materials, all applied with digital precision. In other words, the next big step for inkjet isn't just faster or wider printing, it's smarter materials, more demanding applications, and deeper integration into manufacturing lines. And of course, there are challenges, right? And in my opinion, one of the major challenges remains the scaling up, right? Everyone in this field that you ask that is trying to develop new processes for with inkjet, everybody knows the difficulty of taking a promising result from a laboratory setup and turning into a robust, reliable, productive industrial process. That's exactly where INKATRONIC, we focus our efforts, bridging this gap between lab and fab. And we work as a development partner, so providing equipment, so customized R&D test stations where we integrate industrial printheads and the same components which are then used in later production printer. We can as well support you in process development, so from waveform development, from fluid characterization, and able as well to provide complete, fully engineered production printers, really tailored to the specific industrial applications. So our goal is to help manufacturers, material developers, and integrators move from what I call the can we jet this phase to how do we produce this reliably in scale. And inkjet has already proven itself as a digital and sustainable and highly flexible platform for manufacturing. The real excitement lies in what comes next as we continue to unlock its full potential in functional and industrial applications. So yeah, I mean, it's a technology that has been around for more than 3 decades, but at INKATRONIC, and I strongly believe that it's only at the beginning. And it's truly exciting to see all the fantastic fields where inkjet can still grow. And I am just really fortunate to be involved in all these newer developments and being able to as well, coming from a newer and younger generation, really see the potential of what is next for inkjet.
Thanks, Mikael. That's excellent. And I have to say, from a non-technical point of view, such as myself, it looks challenging and sounds very clever. It's almost where the word inkjet doesn't quite do that justice, does it? Because actually, a lot of what you're doing is not about ink, is it? It's exactly. About different fluids,
materials, right? Chemistries, exactly.
Yeah, and it's different fluids. So it's to do with the function and so on. I was curious to find out a little more about your view of some of the drivers for adoption that are appealing to people. As Ken highlighted very much the economics. Suddenly the need for inkjet became really economically important. Are you seeing some of that play out in your sector? Because you obviously talk to a different set of people, I guess, to compare with Ken. Are the drivers the same?
Yeah, I mean, if I look in insulative coating applications, right? When we're talking with tier 1, tier 2 suppliers of the automotive industry, we see that here in Europe, we're needing to develop, we're needing to innovate, right? Or else we're just not as competitive to our colleagues in China. I mean, they're really doing a great job and catching up very quickly. And here in Europe, we're needing, right, to innovate. And this is where you're seeing a lot of these OEMs trying to figure out different processes. How can we add value to our products? How can we do something better, more efficient, with less cost?
Mm.
This is really what's driving companies in adopting new technologies. So it's also, for sure, also big financial pressure behind, right? Driving innovation here in Europe. This is really what we see as the main driving force, right? Companies that are using analog technique or spray coating and powder coating and other processes that are complex, right? That are just increasing cost, right? And like I mentioned, competition is always a driving factor, and inkjet is really bringing new possibilities and allowing OEMs to completely rethink how to manufacture certain components.
Yeah, and so it's interesting you make the point about Europe and innovation, and I completely agree. I think we've forgotten really the spirit of innovation in a way,
Yes.
and willingness to try things out, take risks, and move quickly and fail fast. All of the things that in America everybody does without even thinking very much, but like we overthink here, and
There's this fear to fail here in Europe. There's this fear to
Yeah.
fail, and exactly how you mentioned, if you're going to fail, fail fast, right? Keep moving. And I feel like Georg, my father usually says that while here in Europe we are going about regulations and discussing, negotiating. In China, they're already building the first machine and developing the second unit, right? Constantly, and they're just much quicker to market. And this is definitely something that needs to change here, and I would say in the industry in Europe.
Yeah, and obviously it's obvious the US's culture of innovation, but like you say, China is outstripping Europe already, I think, and that ability to work at speed. So some of the innovation and some of the developments you're talking about is enabling faster innovation and de-risking some of it as well, isn't it? It means you can try things out without completely reinventing and changing with different things. And also, I think, like you say, competition drives innovation. So you're seeing that as well, which is cool. Thanks for that, Mikael. That was really interesting, and appreciate your talk and so on and your work. And obviously, both Mikael and Ken will be speaking at FuturePrint Industrial Print in Munich in January. So we're going into more detail about the work they're doing. You can meet them. Anybody listening here, welcome to the show. We'll send you a follow-up email with a VIP code for that. Thanks. And our next speaker, very patiently waiting in Germany there, half German, half English, Royce Dodds. Well, welcome, Royce. And I've known Royce a couple of years, friend of FuturePrint. We've interviewed you many times. You were very much at the forefront of the development of inkjet within Decor, and I'll let you explain more about what that means at Wilsonart and so on. And also you've been working quite significantly with AI as well. So welcome to your section, Royce. I've got to find your slides now. Do you want to introduce yourself while I do that?
Yeah, I'll introduce myself and then I'll sort of give you a nod for the slides if that's okay. Yeah, so my name's Royce Dodds. I've been working in the decor industry for about 20 years. Previous to that, I was in the magazine industry in the UK. And yeah, about 20 years ago when we started using inkjet to do samples for customers, we were probably doing about 1 meter 30 an hour, which is really quick. Nice little insider jokes. And then nowadays with Koenig & Bauer and other machine manufacturers, you're doing about 180 meters a minute, which is a nice shift. Yeah, the deco industry, some people might say it's a bit conservative, and it's nice being on the inside to try and sort of push it and drive it and hopefully push it in the right direction. I have a sort of second cap as well that I work work as an ambassador for the Digital Printing Association. So we try and have an overview about how we can support companies and how we can spread the use of digital print within the decor industry. And it's nice because you really get an insight into how companies look at it, approach it. At the very beginning, some people have seen it as an absolute headache. They took people from a rotogravure machine and put them on a digital machine, and I can see somebody smiling there because I'm sure they know the problems that would incur. So you need a different mindset, and I do agree. It's the mindset of younger people is definitely very different to people my age. I'm pushing retirement age almost. So it's nice when you do get these younger people in, and it brings in an energy into that field. The deco industry has changed as well. I mean, we had a talk earlier in the week about 2008 when there was a bit of a recession in the deco industry due to the banking industry not helping. And to me, when you have these areas of problem, shall we say, it actually drives innovation because people start looking around and going, okay, you know, we need to be a bit more cost efficient. So how can we be more cost efficient? One of the things that we've seen, especially over the past few years, is successful companies like Interprint bringing their digital print and showing the world really how to transition, but not completely, but actually how to transition part of their work into digital. Especially in the decor industry, it's not a replacement. You know, it's an adjustment that sits alongside. It's like two jigsaw puzzle pieces that sit very nicely together. You've still got your mass product, you've got volume, so that's your rotogravure raw, and then you've got these nice highlights. And the highlights are very digital based. Over the years, there's been quite an investment in inks and the pigments that are used in both systems. So they're matching a lot better than they used to be. The metamerism, all these sorts of problems that used to occur, they've literally disappeared. And when it comes to sort of driving, nowadays it's about speed as well. I mean, I've had the advantage of being in India and being in China over the past couple of years, and I mean, I was blown away completely. Their work in progress compared to Europe is like you said, they're innovative and they're innovative every single day. And it's speed, 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 and the learning process is incredible. And in the design aspect here in Europe, it's a bit more relaxed, and we're going to scan this today, and we're going to take a few days to scan these things, and then we're going to work on the process, and then it's going to be maybe 4 designs a year if you're really good here. And the guys they're firing them out, but they're doing the same process. They're scanning and they've just got the process nailed. So here it's still quite relaxed, but I think there are systems in place. I don't, we have to be careful how I talk about AI because I talk about it as a set of tools and not an individual piece. So it's a set of tools that support the designer and the creative side of it, and helping a design person sell a product to a customer or an individual to get the results they need, to get the turnout. Many years ago, it used to be the bottleneck was the print machine because it's just the inherent speed of it. But the bottleneck has moved now to the design process because the machines are so much faster, you've got to feed it. But then you've got to sell it at the same time. And if you're inherently bottlenecking in the design stage, then you can't sell the amount you need. And it's I mean, I've been absolutely fascinated watching Adobe develop their AI set of tools because they had AI built into it. And I think might be incorrect, but I'm pretty sure here it's 2012 they had their content aware fill. But it was a form of AI at that time. But it's not AI as we're talking about it today. And then the amount of tools now that Adobe will allow you to connect to help you enhance your designs, it's astonishing. And if we pop up a slide, I'll give it a little brief indication here. So on the entrance to Resopar here in Germany, it's an absolute legacy. It's an incredible company to work at. But it's got these fantastic old buildings here. So it's got really modern and old, and it's almost like a clash. So we wanted to highlight that when people came into the reception area, they could actually meet this sort of old style building, but we wanted to show them that we were trying to do something completely new. And the idea was we had these inkjet splashes on the wall that looked sort of partially graffiti-like. And we got the idea when we were traveling, because you often see these selfie walls that people are taking photos against. And it just sort of works. You know, people are coming out a bit sort of shocked because it's normally a bit sort of, yeah, like I say, conservative, we use that word. But now you're sort of seeing the sort of highlights. So if we just pop to the next one, the next slide as well. And of course, using these within Photoshop, you've got almost these 3D structures, and it's beautiful. I always love when you see people and they're having to put their hand on the product because they're not sure if it's really structured or not. So they're not only they're taking photo of us, they're actually checking, and then they're, you know, it's a physical interaction with it. And it's one of the best compliments I think I can ever get when you see this. But then with the next slide, this is really taking AI as a tool, I'd almost say, to a next level. So we've got a really, these two pieces, one of them is real and one of them is AI based. And the AI based is still coming from a high-end 600 dpi scan. But using Photoshop and a set of tools that we've got, we can run over this scan and effectively recreate something beyond the original. And it's beautiful in the fact that you can actually be scanning different objects, but then automatically then feeding in to Photoshop, and it's running through a process. So while you're scanning, then you scan your second piece, it's already creating your third piece. You scan your third piece, it's creating your fourth piece. So it's a nice tool, and the compliment was here that you gave this back to the person that did the scan, and they weren't sure which was which. So that was a beautiful compliment at the same time. They really couldn't see the difference between the scan and the AI version. But you can't generate this through prompting because the quality is really not there at the moment. I mean, prompting is great for specific sizes, but I have to be careful about my wording here. It's feeding the right information into the recipe to get the right information out of the recipe. So it's quality in, quality out. And that's where that comes back to. And yeah, that's fine. So, and at Resopol, what we're going to be offering is the fact that the reason we are extremely unique, especially in the decor branch, I'd probably say almost in Europe, is that we can deliver a single piece of HPL, a single piece of Schichtstoff or compact platter. And other companies concentrate on mass. It's about cubic in a lot of companies. It's about how many hundreds of boards do you need? And of course, in this climate, in this business climate, we sit in quite a unique position that we can turn around and somebody says, oh, I need a board of this, a board of this, and a board of this. And can you create them? There's some scan material. Can you produce me a single piece? And it's not financially viable for other companies to do it. We make it work. So and that's where digital print really comes in. And it plays a key role here. And it's vital. The costs of creating cylinders for designs, it's just impossible to do that for a single product. It would have to be tons of paper that you produce. And at the same time, we have a design library that people can actually access then and say, okay, I need that, and that design, and we print them. It's really a print on demand scenario. There's no stock. For specific designs, they get printed fresh and they're matched and they go to the customers and the customers are happy. And it's the ability that digital print gives you to be that flexible with the customers. And it's not just here. I mean, most of the companies that do have digital print, they'll be explaining the same sorts of things. When you see rotogravure competing and on a level with digital print, there's a wonderful presentation that Robert Beerforn from Interprint made about changing the cylinders, changing then the designs, washing down, setting up times. And you can see all these tiny little jobs on the digital print machine going through. And the cost has been reduced so much that it actually makes it so much more efficient for these smaller jobs to be done in digital print. And it goes back to what has been said earlier. It's a cost factor. At the very beginning, because of the low speeds, the cost was absolutely ridiculous. But now, because the cost factor and the speed factor is there, and hopefully I'm not getting this wrong, it used to be about 4 tons as a cutoff point. Used to be a lot higher. But now we're actually doing 4 to 8 tons, and you can match the prices with digital print. And that's a key role, and it's like this economic climate at the moment we're all experiencing. It's about collaboration. It's about innovation, but it's certainly about costs, and it's keeping an eye on them. And that's for me an absolute key role that digital print has played through the time I've noticed it.
Mm.
And we talked about that as well, in a period of some uncertainty. It's always good to try and find that bit of blue sky. Yeah. And that's for me a key role that digital print offers people at the moment.
Yeah, brilliant. And like you say, the opportunity in that adversity, if you will, is that you're looking for, you can find inventive ways to create new value and new business, solve some of those problems. Not
Yes.
least because I've seen some of these rotogravure cylinders. I mean, they're literally engraved, aren't they? I mean, it's a real
Yes.
art. And I think they cost 100K plus per cylinder, something like that. They repeat. They may look lovely, and they may be very economically viable on long run and so on, but the patterns repeat, don't they? And therefore there's a bit, and then you have to print a lot of stock, and the stock therefore has a lot of money or expectation. If the design doesn't sell, there's a waste. So digital comes in as this agile kind of creative solution that like you say doesn't replace, like it doesn't particularly necessarily in functional or in DCS, but it does something so fundamentally different. And what you've been discovering over the last kind of year or two is add like a turbo to the engine, isn't it? AI.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like wow, you're just kind of suddenly putting digital print on a completely other scale, and you're getting value from that. And like I think one of the examples you said to me before, there was a specific African wood, right? That's really rare, and you were able to use scan and use and replicate and bring something to life that is it's just
Yeah. Yeah.
virtually.
There are rare woods. There are rare woods that people are no longer allowed to utilize.
Hmm.
And there is a wood dealer that I know, and they got them before these were actually not able to be sold, let's put it that way. So they actually have a lot of stock that they're not allowed to touch at all.
Hmm.
I'm pretty sure there's German bureaucracy. I'm sure Mikael know a bit about German bureaucracy with everything. It's all stamped and documented and everything, so you have to be extremely careful. And it will give you the ability to create things that are no longer be able to be handled or dealt with. And it's a bit like bringing back a mammoth, shall we say?
Hmm.
It's that sort of level. You can bring back some most beautiful wood designs for sure. Um, and it's the flexibility that sort of gives you, like I say, it comes down to a lot about quality for sure. As a there's a sort of there is a limit. There's a limit at the moment. But when I compare my very first ever AI generated image, and I've always got this thing about a Porsche in a cabin in the mountains, a nice little Porsche S4, sort of sitting in the mountains. And the very first one, you were like, what on earth is this? But then you type it into version 7 of Midjourney and exactly the same prompt, and it looks incredibly real. It looks like a drone shot.
Hmm.
But then even worse now, and I won't get too far into that area, the actual photograph can be turned into a video, which is just mind-blowing for marketing people in this industry as well.
Hmm.
The things that you can now create are so close But it does come down to sort of a lot about resolution and things. And that's where I think you've got some very smart companies in Germany. Sauer Essig, they have an awful lot of AI tools in-house that they utilize. They are a very, very smart company. And the people that are developing their own in-house set of tools, we've got some scripts that we run through Photoshop. And that's sort of key point, you know. How do we utilize these tools that we have and how can we enhance them to bring the win that we need to our product? And it's a key point. And yeah, I mean, it's been a very interesting journey for sure. And the for a man of my age, I would say I'm very childlike because I still play Skyrim every weekend. and and I'm very much looking forward to the next version. And it's that quality aspect of things, you know. And it's getting closer, but it's the ability to use the tool sets you have, like these high-end scanners that people have at the moment in the deco industry, being able to use the software that people have, the native software that designers are used to, and then they actually interact with the AI set of tools that are available. And when they're not available, I mean, it is incredibly easy to set up your own AI system now. And
Yeah,
that's the shocking thing about it. I mean, I've got a Mac Studio and it's just rammed and it generates images. You know, I can feed it data and it will give me back more data.
Mm.
And it's stunning. It's quite shocking, and I'm honestly so passionate about digital print because it offers so many opportunities for people to grow in all different areas. You know?
But the same thing with AI that is with digital print. It's about the input, isn't it? And it's about what you do with it. And it's view it needs
Sure.
it's a different beast to analog. And if it's treated in that way, it will add value. And particularly if you then see the opportunities and the themes for those problems, there's opportunity and value in creating that change. I really appreciate that, Royce. We covered three different worlds, and Ken's given us a universe as well of Inkjet at the very beginning, which has been fantastic. I've learned a lot. I've really, really enjoyed it. Any sort of final thoughts and comments? I know we had a question. I've got a question from someone around corrugated adoption, which I was going to pose to Ken. But before we get to that, any other sort of final thoughts and themes, gentlemen? Ken, because you kicked off, I'll let you start.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think this was great. If you think about sort of the theme of the three of us, I thought it was really interesting, right? Because I talked a little bit about sort of hitting production, right? And that's when these markets go exponential. Mikael talked really about, he had mentioned the same issue, right? That he does work both on, the early days scale up, but then how do you really scale it into production? To me, that's huge. Royce's comments, I thought, on AI are great because, the workflow, and I didn't really talk about this, Mikael, it's a huge issue in that analog to digital transition, right? People that print analog today, they are using, spot colors, right? They've never seen a rip before. They've never, Royce is laughing now, right? But yeah, this is a huge issue. This is one of the issues if we sell someone a system, okay, there's a whole adoption curve there, right? Which is really important. And we as our industry, also our company, we've got to get better and better at this. But these are key enablers. But the AI end of upfront workflow is going to enable further digital adoption by being able to drive more and more and more personalized design and shorter run and everything else for lower cost, right? At the end of the day, all three of us are about driving the cost down of the jobs that they have. That to me is to me really interesting, right? Because we're all saying the same thing from three different viewpoints.
Yeah, yeah, and the themes are intersecting and slightly different. And I guess
Yep,
the other factor that we haven't really talked about is at the end of the day, it's people, isn't it? And sometimes culture and people just get in the way of things. And conversely,
absolutely.
some take the lead, and that's where change and the tipping point. There's a book out at the moment called The Revenge of the Tipping Point. You mentioned,
Yes.
and that is a real thing, and it's going to happen in these markets. Obviously,
Mhm.
Mikael, any sort of thoughts? You're Inkatronic's a leader in the field you're in. Obviously, you're exciting times for you.
Yes, I mean, I'm still only 21 years old. I have a long long career ahead of me, and but I'm extremely fortunate to be involved in inkjet already at such a young age. And like I mentioned, I think that that we'll see the adoption of our technology becoming more and more common. And but there's a lot of challenges that are still needing many solutions. And yeah, I'm just glad that I'm able here with my company to bring in as much input as possible to this industry.
Yeah, fantastic. And like I said, INKATRONIC going to be exhibiting at FuturePrint Industrial Print in Munich. You can see them there. They're going to be speaking. Ken's going to be speaking as well as is Royce. And Royce will be speaking as part of the AI for Industrial Print conference on 22nd. We've got a whole focus on AI and deployment and so on. And just sort of finishing off really, FuturePrint Industrial Print, 21st, 22nd of January. We're getting a huge amount of interest in this event. It's really sort of bridging the gap between what's possible with inkjet and the new application areas for industrial that are kind of moving on and becoming really sort of compelling, not least because of these kind of VUCA pressures we're experiencing. Actually, that's playing into that. We need that flexibility, agility, and there's a huge amount of I think compounded interest in digitalization, and we've just got that, hopefully that nice sweet spot. So that coming together, as I said, 21st, 22nd of January, we'll email everybody with a follow-up email for that. Just before we sign off, there was a couple of questions, if you've got some time, just to finish off. So this one is from Daniele. What technological disruption could drive digital printing to achieve widespread adoption in corrugated market, expanding beyond its current limited share after 9-10 years since first launches of single pass? I don't know if that's something you can deal with there, that question, Ken.
Sure, I can start. Like I actually kind of mentioned this earlier, it's been, I think from a supplier's perspective, a little disappointing. It's certainly grown. There's no debate. Digital is now a key solution within the corrugated markets. It's not taken the kind of share anybody thought it would. Litho lam is tough to beat, right? It's beautiful, right? It's actually not that expensive. And today, at least, you don't see, the market pull yet from the Amazons and others trying to decorate short run boxes. It's just getting started. It's just, and it hasn't hit that tipping point yet, right? Because and my gut is that it's really from a market adoption perspective. I think the technology is actually there. A number of suppliers have actually demonstrated that sort of stuff, even on, folded boxes and things like that, even at, not quite production speed, but maybe close. But the reality is the market today has not pulled it. And so I don't think we have a technology problem. I really don't. I think it's just more of is the market really there? Because folks, again, I think they've already demonstrated the tech a bit.
Yeah, brilliant. Thanks, Ken. And just a final question around sustainability and how it shapes the future for industrial inkjet. How important is it? Is it a compelling and do you think a fully sustainable and affordable ink could bring this more to market, I suppose? Sustainability.
Yes. Again, sorry, please jump in, but sustainability is really interesting. We could talk about it in a lot of ways. I think digital print in general is incredibly sustainable. You get rid of all of the waste of consumables. Think about, when we print direct to an object, you get rid of the label, right? Imagine all that. It's not just the label, it was the liner, it was, the amount of savings within digital from a sustainability perspective is huge. Take an example of the metal can markets. In Canada, they've now outlawed, or at least certain parts of Canada, they've outlawed shrink sleeve. Why? Because when you go to recycle a can, the shrink sleeve actually catches fire, right? Very bad. So you're going to see things like shrink and other things begin to shrink, no pun intended, right, in some of those markets. And direct to object, we feel, will be a great sustainable solution there. From an ink perspective, today at least, most products, whether it be, large scale plastic containers, metal cans, they're considered fully recyclable even when they're inkjet printed. Okay. But there are inks already on the market that are actually will come off during the recycling process, et cetera. So I think certainly it's a driver for digital. It's probably not the number one driver that drives someone to buy a printer, but it's certainly there. It's certainly there. And I think with digital, we have incredible upside from a sustainability perspective.
Brilliant. Well, thanks for that answer. And gentlemen, thanks so much for joining us. Ken, Mikael,
Anytime.
Royce, really enjoyed that. Thank you very much. The recording will be available in a couple of hours, I'd imagine. And come and see us at FuturePrint in Munich, 21st, 22nd of January. Thank you very much for joining.
Thank you so much to all of you.
Marcus.
Thanks a lot, Marcus.